Hello friends, welcome back to strategic management. We talked about the span of strategic management and the perspective of strategic management with a context of management of strategy or strategically managing things. And this is the story we are going to build up throughout this subject, throughout the course. And I told you that somehow we would realize that the span of every organization encompasses both these phrases as elements which they pursue, which they design and then pursue, of course. But before I go ahead, before I decipher what strategic management is, which I subsequently would be doing in my future sessions, I wish to take you towards the understanding of this word strategy. And as I said, and I requested that try and decipher this with different kinds of language connotations as well. Try to find out the Hindi meaning or the meaning of word strategy in your mother tongue as well. Try to understand that who are those people who have been using strategy with in a different language with a similar kind of a meaning, with a wider connotation, or let us say a shrinked connotation, and how they have been using it and how they have been referring to it. Try and understand this, start observing that. Try and talk to, for example, you are using a mode of transport, for example, let us say a hired vehicle, and the person who is driving that, try and talk to the person about, let us say, what is your strategy for growing your business? You are the owner of one taxi, one car, how do you want to grow that? Stop somewhere on a highway and talk to a trucker, for example, a person who drives truck. Let us say he is the owner or the driver of that truck, and try and understand what kind of a connotation he has about this word strategy. What do they think? How do they use it? How do they refer to this? Are they referring to this with a shorter kind of a span, or they look at it with a visionary kind of a perspective? You would realize that they would have larger kind of a context and a visionary perspective and an action based kind of an element in front of them. For example, I was talking to this person who owns a truck, and I was asking him that what do you think about as far as this business goes? He said that the demand of this business is going to continuously go up. Economy is rising, trucking is required, highways are getting better, and I have one truck today. I am trying to save some costs basically as far as my routes go, my maintenance goes, and then I'm talking to my bankers, and I would be adding something as far as my revenue plan goes, and then I would be convincing my bankers, and I would be taking some loan, and I have some loan repayment plan as far as the whole situation goes, and I am adding on my customers also, and I am adding on some staff member also, and I wish to add on one more truck, and I am going to install a software as far as my truck goes, and Bloom Global kind of a company is going to help me there. Bloom Global, as we all know, they are into a large space of developing software around logistics and supply chain at large. And it is a very interesting business which they are pursuing at a global level, and fortunately one of the founding members of that organization is our own alumnus, and he studied at IIT Roorkee. So it's wonderful. I would tell you his story with his due permission in due course of time. So you see, the point is that this is how a trucker was talking about, and that is how Bloom Global is looking at the business as far as the whole situation goes. For them, larger corporations are also the customers to whom they are serving, with lots of software acumen and different kinds of products. Just visit the website of Bloom Global and you would realize that. And on the other side, their Indian arm, and I was talking to their India CEO, and they are focusing upon several kinds of customers, and very interesting kind of a business which they are pursuing here, and it is very intelligent of them. So very interesting. So you see, that is how we have to look at things. Try to find out about such kind of things in your daily discussions also, and try to talk about these kind of terms and terminologies with your family members also, friends also, within your organizations and everywhere. So, here we go, let us talk about the word strategy. You see, the text says, and we are using J. Breaker, the Historical Development of Strategic Management Concept, Academy of Management Review is a very renowned and established publication. It's a journal. So here, the author talks about strategy. This paper says that the strategy comes from Greek strategos, a general, a commander. So, we have taken, or the text takes this word from a word which means a general, a commander. That means strategy has an element of leadership. We would be talking about that. It's very interesting. Which in, and then the line further says that a general, which in turn comes from roots meaning army and lead, leadership, army, defense, offense, wars, competition, business, competitive advantage. We would be looking at this, and we would be talking about this in due course of time. It's very interesting. Keep following as far as the videos go. So, the Greek verb stratego means, now when you take it with a connotation of being a verb, it means to plan the destruction of one's enemies through effective use of resources, to face the competition in business world through effective use of resources. We should not call our competitors as enemies, but competition is competition, and we strive to do best and outgrow the competition. So, wars, it was different. We have to defeat the enemies with a different kind of a connotation, but in business world we have to grow ourselves to beat the competition. So, it's a positive connotation which business world gives, and that is the beauty of business and business related activities, that you do not harm others, but you grow yourself to dwarf others basically, and so on. So, businesses are positive in nature, and business world, it has a positive connotation in terms of defeating the competition, not killing the competition as such basically, although every organization strives for that, and then they feel that they are actually pushing the competition back. But wars, it was different, it was defeating enemies, but the connotation is slightly more positive in terms of as far as business goes. So, Greek verb stratego means to plan the destruction of one's enemies through effective use of resources to defeat the business, or to push the business, to defeat the competition and push the competition aside, as far as through the help of better resources and so on. So, we will be talking about that, and that is how this word strategy and strategos and stratego come up. Here again I would try to suggest that when we say strategy, try to decipher that with the perspective of Rananiti in Hindi, for example, and you may choose other languages, as I said. And when you would decipher that, Ran, that is a frame wherein we have different army in front of us, they have different kinds of resources, they have different kinds of perspective, they have different kinds of tactics, and we would be using tactics as well, and whole lot of our structure is in front of us, and here we have different kinds of advantages. We know our resources, we know how capable our team is, our soldiers are, and who are those soldiers who can fight a longer war and who can fight a shorter war, who are more good at artillery war, who are more good at as far as one-to-one war, and so on. So we know and we understand those kind of resources. So, Ran and Niti, how to go about it. I would not digress too much in deciphering those, but I would definitely suggest that we must look at these things with this kind of a translative perspective as well. Now, you see, when we are trying to analyze this general and defeating enemy perspective, and as I said, when we are talking about resources, so in today's contemporary world, resources are associated with environmental elements as far as what kind of environmental elements we should be choosing upon and how we would be going upon as far as this whole situation goes. So, and you would realize that there would be several kinds of environmental elements which would be supporting us in terms of not being in our control if they at all would support us. For example, political environment basically. So, that cannot be controlled by organizations, and political environment has a specific orientation. That means the government has specific kinds of plans and objectives, and if those plans and objectives are conducive for our business, then we can take advantage of those, or we have to align our business with them. That we will be talking about as far as those things go. That is one environmental element. For example, technological resources which are at our doorstep, which we are capable of. For example, India has huge technological resource in terms of software development, because in due course of time, in past 3 decades or so, our programmers, our computer science experts, our IT experts, our engineers, they have grown as a big force, and their cumulative acumen has developed so many software products which can be used as resources. I was talking about Bloom Global, and there are several kinds of organizations which we can refer to, which have captured a very large space in the software business in the whole of this world, and our graduates, they have contributed a lot as far as the whole situation goes. So, that can be an important resource. Then many organizations, they have an origin in the countries where they have natural resources. You would have heard of semiconductor industries organizations, and India has initiated a semiconductor mission for itself basically, because we realized in due course of time that without developing such kind of an acumen and a resource and industries around that business, we won't be able to support several kinds of businesses which we are trying to pursue in due course of time, in terms of small scale manufacturing, large scale manufacturing. We want to manufacture our own, produce our own aeroplanes, we want to manufacture super speed trains on one side, we wish to manufacture our own cars, we are developing our own satellites, and we have reached to the moon, where we are going to the sun. So, we have to have that kind of a support from semiconductor industry, which several countries they have as a resource for themselves, who have been who are resource rich in terms of natural elements, or material which is being, and minerals which are being used there in such kind of an industry. The processes they have developed in due course of time, the acumen they have developed in due course of time, and so on. India is trying to go up to that level basically. So, they have created a semiconductor mission. Until that point, when we are resource rich in such kind of a business, until that point, others who have that kind of a resource would have a larger advantage, and that is where resource based competitive advantage would always be there. In COVID time, this was a major news that so many automotive companies, they had to reduce their production, they had to stall their production, because supplies of such kind of equipment and chips were not there because of shortage in terms of the original producing companies and countries go. So, that is one part. So, you see, that is how we try to decipher. So, one is talking about resources as that element talks about. Other, as I said, Ranneeti. You see, that is what we have talked about, and when you will start looking into the meanings of Ran and Niti, as I said, you would know that what I imply as of now. And as we were discussing, the origin of this word strategy lies in military, army, and the text which we are using here is Macmillan and Tempo, What is Strategy in Strategic Management, Oxford University Press. And this text talks about that the strategos in Athens was an elected general. As I said, this word has a connotation of leadership and command, and this was a post created when Athens was at war with Persia in 506 BC. Because we are using this text and it talks about Athens and Persian war, and the word comes from that a general was elected, and you know, he was called strategos. And the connotation we would be talking about, and we would be deciphering that what strategos was supposed to do. But this can be imagined in terms of Indian wars, Indian rule, several rulers, several people who actually ran so many dynasties in India. And then in democratic India, we can talk about governments with a perspective of leading the economy. We can talk about Indian defense forces leading India's defense. We can talk about Indian railways, as I talked about earlier. So we can think in terms of commanders sitting in different positions, looking at things with ran and niti, winning. And that is how we would be looking at. And when we talk about winning, I would be talking about competition later on, and you would appreciate that. When we talk about winning, we refer to competing actually. And while referring to competition, we refer to what we should be doing which others won't be able to do. That is how concept of core competencies and those kind of things come in. And you would realize that even if there is no strong competition or practically no competition in front of us, many a times it happens, then also we have a niti in front of us, and run is still there. That means a frame is there and we have this strategic pathway in front of us. That is what we would learn in due course of time, and that is what I wish to emphasize. That is how organizations which largely, I would not say monopolistic in nature, but they have this advantage of being unique around the world. That means very few organizations they might have as competition, or they are so large that they do best whatever they do and none other can follow that. There are few airplane manufacturers in the world who have competition, but when you go to the origin of such companies, you would realize that at one point of time there was only one such company, and so on. And then there are several other kinds of very specialized organizations manufacturing very specialized products which touch the lives of so many people around the world. So despite of the fact not having large competition, or having a practical absence of competition in front of them, they still have competitive frame of mind, and that is what we wish to understand. So the next element this text says is, the Greeks saw strategy settings as one of the responsibilities of a leader, a connection that continues in modern thinking. Authors, they try to build up that cord from this side to that side, and as I said, if you will look into Indian text, you would realize that we have, you go into the history basically, go back towards, if you do not want to go for 1000 years, go for 300, 400, 500 years before British era, and then you go for other eras, and you would realize that this leader, they had this responsibility of actually steering everything towards expansion, stability, growth, prosperity, opulence, which some leaders they thought of that they should be having by acquiring more nations through winning those nations and countries around them basically. So some dynasties, they started going for expansion and winning over different kingdoms. Some, they focused upon stabilizing things basically. They were constructive, they built forts, fortresses. They started focusing upon science and technological development. They started focusing upon mining, cotton production, and making their nation knowledge rich. You would realize that there are descriptions in different kinds of courts of different kinds of kings, wherein several kinds of poets were there, several kinds of learned people were there, and so on. And if you will go into the ancient text, and you would go for ideal kingdoms, Mahatma Gandhi has described the context of ideal kingdoms, you would realize that definitely has a perspective of prosperity and opulence, and how it was pursued through environmental sustainability. That is also an important element, and I would be talking briefly about that when I would go to future discussions basically, and that would be interesting, how once we had opulence with environmental sustainability, and the balance when it sort of, it tilted towards few things, I would not say greed, but irrational growth in terms of several kinds of products, then it was not so strategic as far as decisions go. So strategy there I would be deciphering in terms of industries and economies. Here as of now we are focusing upon organizational perspective. So the Greeks also gave serious thought to what kind of person would be suitable to the role of leading, as far as the scenario goes, to the role and how they should be trained. What elements of leadership, what capabilities and qualities of leadership the leader must have, the strategos must have, who can actually execute those qualities and capabilities in terms of strategically managing things, in terms of, or let us say even in terms of management of strategy. They concluded that intellectual skills, and mark these words which are important. So they concluded that intellectual skills, while essential for a good strategist, but not sufficient unless supported by practical learning gained from experience. Now, these we would be talking about if there is a young leader and does not have that kind of an experience. How does that leader actually uses the whatever experience he may gain, or should he be using the experience from others? That is where advisors, and that is where the team building, that is where the role of team and other things they come in. That is where human resource development capabilities come in there. That is where core competencies those come in. So, intellectual skills of an individual, creativity, vision, and intellectual skills are associated with visualizing things, visualizing from this point to that point, and as I said in my last discussion, value webs, how things would be affecting whole of the situation around this world. Would I be reaching to this world and would I be reshaping many things around this world? That is what a leader must be capable of thinking, and practical learning gained through experience and so on. And then again, deciphering the meaning of strategy, we are using Hitt, Hoskisson and Ireland. It is a textbook, a standard textbook used in strategic management. The name of the book is Strategic Management, Competitiveness and Globalization, Concepts and Cases. So now this talks about, about the meaning of strategy, and I will read it for you. A strategy is an integrated, and now we will specifically be pausing at on the words which are important here. A strategy is an integrated, coordinated set of commitments. So there is an element of integration, as I said, visualizing from this end to that end and whole of the value web. So integration of elements. So is an integrated, coordinated, and whatever actions we would design at whichever level, at whichever functional level, or whichever points of actions which we would be choosing. So we will generate a coordination between one action to the other action, and the first action as the input for the next action, and so on. So integration, coordination. Strategy is an integrated and coordinated set of commitments. What kind of a time, energy, resource I would be committing to, the whole situation goes. Set of commitments and actions. How would I be executing those? Actions designed to exploit core competencies. Here comes a very important term, and which one of my favorite authors, Professor C.K. Prahalad, contributed a lot as far as the whole situation goes. Others, they have talked about it quite a bit, but I remember him, as far as this contribution to this term and deciphering this term for many organizations and for academia as well. So to exploit core competencies and gain a competitive advantage, that means winning, how to go ahead of the competition. And we will be talking about this specific word, core competency. Is core competency what we know best, or is core competency associated with the kind of people whose knowledge can be channelized to do whatever best can be done? How to look at core competencies? You see, these are two things basically. We know best, that means we know how to do things, and these are the things we can do best. And on the other side, we try to analyze the knowledge of our team members, try and structure that knowledge into a meaning which is profitable and beneficial for us and our stakeholders, and try to develop that knowledge and use it for that kind of a purpose. In India, many organizations are doing this right away. When we say that we are developing the acumen, our knowledge and acumen to develop semiconductor industry, that means several companies are using resources from around, inviting people from around, trying to analyze what they can think best, channelize that into a structure and use that for semiconductor industry development through establishment of different kinds of organizations. You would have heard that we have established different kinds of applications. Today we have several applications, UPI based applications. UPI is an app which all of us are using at large, and it is one of the largest application used by by people anywhere in this world basically. So the kinds of transactions we are doing through UPI is huge, humongous. How did we develop the vaccine in COVID-19 situation? We used the acumen of our researchers to convert it into an immediate solution. So that is how we try to structure that knowledge for meaningfully generating gains for everyone in terms of profits or in terms of benefits and so on. And there are several such kinds of examples in contemporary India which can be thought of with the similar kind of a connotation, developing core competencies. So it is an important thing which we should realize, and why I emphasized upon this point at the end of this session, because I want you to look at, for example, ISRO's present programs. We had the knowledge of science, now we are actually converting that knowledge to develop a frame of thought around what we are doing presently in terms of developing satellites and reaching to the moon and so on, and we are developing our in-house software and in-house acumen around that basically. We are even developing our own hardware, and that is how we develop our core competencies. Before leaving, I will just read it once more for you. A strategy is an integrated and coordinated set of commitments, focus and devoting resources and time, set of commitments and actions designed to exploit core competencies which we develop in due course of time, core competencies, and gain a competitive advantage. I would be coming back to you with different elements and several other definitions of strategy and an understanding of strategic management with different kinds of perspectives given by different kinds of authors from different regions of this world in my next sessions. Till then, goodbye.